life looked complete. She had a stable job, a clean apartment, and people who cared about her, but inside her heart carried a restlessness that never slept, a sense that something important was missing, something no routine or success could fill. And as she reached her apartment and unlocked the door, the silence greeted her like an old truth she had been avoiding. The kind that waits patiently until you finally stop running. She placed her bag down, turned on a lamp, and stared at the rain sliding down her window, thinking about how many times she had told herself that love was supposed to be simple, that one person should be enough, that wanting more depth or understanding meant something was wrong with her. But every time she tried to shrink her feelings to fit that idea, they only grew stronger, heavier, more demanding. And she remembered past relationships where she gave everything to one person, believing that effort alone could make love last, only to find herself still lonely even while holding someone's hand. Her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts, and she saw Daniel Brooks' name on the screen, his message short but caring, asking if she was okay, and she felt that familiar warmth he always brought, the kind that made her feel safe and understood without pressure. And before she could reply, another notification appeared, this one from Lucas Reed, light and gentle, telling her he had made soup and thought of her. And Emma closed her eyes for a moment, her chest tight, because this was the truth she had been avoiding. Two people who mattered to her in different ways, two connections that filled different parts of her heart, and neither of them felt wrong. She moved through her apartment, changing clothes, pacing, replaying moments with both men in her mind. Daniel's calm presence during long talks, Lucas's easy laughter that made her forget the weight she carried, and she wondered when her life had quietly shifted into something more complex than she ever planned, because she never meant to stand in the middle of two emotional paths, never meant to care so deeply in two directions at once. Yet here she was, unable to deny what she felt. She sat on her couch, phone in hand, typing and deleting replies, afraid that any answer would reveal too much, because how could she explain a feeling she barely understood herself? A need that wasn't about replacing one person with another but about wanting connection in a fuller way, a way that felt honest to who she was. The rain grew louder, the city outside fading into a blur, and Emma realized that this ache wasn't new. It had followed her for years, through different seasons and different faces, always whispering that she was built for more emotional depth than one person alone could reach. And that truth scared her because it didn't fit the simple stories she grew up believing. She finally sent short replies to both messages, careful and neutral, then placed her phone face down as if that could quiet her thoughts. But nothing stopped the realization settling deep inside her. She could no longer pretend she was content with half understood feelings or quiet sacrifices, and somewhere in the city, Daniel was probably sensing her distance, Lucas feeling her hesitation, both of them more aware than she wanted to admit, because they weren't blind. And even if no words had been spoken yet, something unspoken was already forming between them all, a truth moving closer with every passing moment. And as Emma leaned back and listened to the rain, she understood that her life was standing at the edge of change, whether she was ready or not, because she didn't just want love, she wanted to be fully seen, fully understood, and deep down she knew that wanting more did not make her broken, it made her honest, and that honesty was about to test everything she thought she knew about love. Daniel Brooks had always been the steady one in Emma Harper's life, the person who showed up without being asked and stayed without needing praise. And as autumn moved deeper into the city, his presence became even more noticeable to her, because whenever the world felt loud or confusing, he was the quiet place where her thoughts could rest, the one who listened carefully when she spoke about work, fears, or memories she rarely shared, never judging, never rushing her to decide anything. And Emma valued that safety more than she admitted. Lucas Reed, on the other hand, moved through her days like sudden sunlight, appearing with warm smiles, unexpected plans, and an ease that made heavy moments feel lighter. And when Emma laughed with him, she felt a version of herself that was more open, more alive, a side she had once thought was lost. Their paths crossed often, not by accident but by choice, coffee meetings after work, short walks near the water, shared meals where conversation flowed easily, and although nothing improper ever happened, the emotional closeness grew stronger with each passing week, forming a quiet tension that sat beneath every smile. Emma noticed how Daniel watched her when she grew quiet, how Lucas noticed when her energy changed, and she sensed that both men understood more than they ever said, because care has a way of sharpening awareness, and neither of them pushed her, neither demanded clarity she wasn't ready to give. One evening, they met at a small cafe near the harbor, the kind of place filled with soft music and warm lights, and as they sat together, Emma felt the weight of their combined presence, the way both of them made her feel supported in different ways, and she struggled to keep her thoughts steady, knowing that she stood at the center of something delicate. Daniel spoke about work, Lucas joked about a minor mistake he made that morning, and Emma smiled, but her heart beat faster with every passing minute, because she could feel the unspoken truth stretching between them, growing harder to ignore. She noticed the brief look Daniel and Lucas exchanged, not cold or jealous, but thoughtful, as if both were silently agreeing on something they hadn't yet named, and Emma's breath caught, because that glance confirmed her fear and her relief at the same time. They knew. The realization shook her, not because she felt exposed, but because she felt understood without having to explain herself, and for a moment she wondered if that understanding would lead to distance or honesty. As the evening went on, the conversation slowed, and Emma found herself tracing the edge of her cup, her thoughts racing, wondering how long she could keep walking this careful line before someone got hurt, because she had promised herself long ago that she would never lead anyone on, never hide behind silence to avoid hard truths. When they finally stepped outside into the cool night air, the city lights reflecting off the water, Daniel offered his coat when Emma shivered. Lucas teased her gently for forgetting her scarf. And in those small gestures, she felt both comforted and torn, because each of them filled a different space in her life that the other could not replace. As they said goodbye, Emma watched them walk in opposite directions, her chest tight, knowing that her life was slowly moving toward a moment she could no longer delay, a moment where honesty would either break what they shared or deepen it. And as she walked home alone, she realized that the hardest part was not choosing between people, but choosing whether she was brave enough to accept her own heart as it was, because denying it would be easier, but truth, once seen, could never be unseen. The night the truth came out was not planned, and that was what made it impossible to escape, because a sudden power outage wrapped the neighborhood in darkness and forced Emma Harper, Daniel Brooks, and Lucas Reid to sit together in Lucas's quiet living room with only candles and the distant city sounds around them. And in that stillness, Emma felt her thoughts grow louder, her heart beating fast as if it knew this moment had been waiting for her. And while Daniel sat calm and thoughtful and Lucas leaned forward with concern in his eyes, Emma realized she could no longer hide behind small talk or careful smiles, because the weight of everything she felt had become too heavy to carry alone. She spoke slowly at first, admitting she was tired of pretending her emotions were simple, tired of shaping herself to fit what love was supposed to look like, and as her voice steadied, words she had held back for months finally found their way out, explaining how she had spent years giving her whole heart to one person at a time only to feel incomplete, how she kept thinking something was wrong with her for wanting deeper connection, broader understanding, and more emotional space than one relationship had ever given her. She looked at Daniel and told him how much his steady presence meant to her, how his patience made her feel safe and valued, then turned to Lucas and spoke of how his warmth and energy reminded her of joy she thought she had lost. And as she said these things aloud, the fear she expected did not come from them, only quiet attention, and that alone made her eyes burn with tears. She confessed that her feelings were not a mistake or a game, that she had never crossed boundaries or made false promises, but that she could no longer deny the truth of her heart. And when she finally fell silent, the room felt suspended in time, as if the world was holding its breath. Daniel was the first to speak, his voice calm and gentle, saying he had sensed her struggle long before she ever named it, that he saw the way her thoughts drifted and how she held herself back, and that understanding her did not make him angry, because feelings were not something to be punished. Lucas followed, admitting he too had known, not through suspicion but through care, explaining that when you truly pay attention to someone, you notice the quiet battles they fight inside. And hearing this broke something open in Emma, because instead of rejection she found acceptance, instead of judgment she found honesty, yet the relief was mixed with fear, because understanding did not solve the future. And as the candles flickered, they spoke openly about uncertainty, about limits, about respect, each of them acknowledging that no one had easy answers and that love, in any form, required courage and responsibility. Emma admitted she did not know what the right path was, only that lying to herself would destroy her more than facing discomfort, and Daniel admitted that he needed time to understand his own boundaries, while Lucas shared that warmth alone could not replace clarity, and in that shared vulnerability, something shifted, not toward a clear solution but toward truth. The power eventually returned, lights filling the room again, but none of them rushed to end the conversation, because what mattered had already been said in the dark, and when Emma finally stood to leave, her heart felt raw yet lighter, knowing she had chosen honesty over silence, even if it meant stepping into uncertainty. Outside, the night air felt cool and sharp, and as she walked home alone, she understood that this was not the end of the story but the beginning of a harder chapter, one where she could no longer hide from herself or from those who cared for her, because truth had a way of opening doors that could never be closed again, and whatever waited beyond them would demand more courage than she had ever needed before. The weeks after that honest night moved quickly but felt heavy, because nothing was the same even though no dramatic choices were made, and Emma Harper found herself living in a space where truth had been spoken but the future remained open, and instead of rushing toward answers, the three of them chose patience, allowing time to show what words could not. Emma focused on listening to herself more carefully, paying attention to what her heart needed rather than what fear told her was acceptable, and she learned that her longing was not about attention or escape but about connection, about feeling fully understood without being reduced to a single role. Daniel Brooks stepped back just enough to reflect on his own limits, spending quiet evenings walking alone, thinking about whether love for him meant certainty or honesty. And he realized that what mattered most was not control but respect, even if that respect required courage. Lucas Reed faced his own doubts too, questioning whether his easy warmth could survive uncertainty, yet finding that caring deeply did not weaken him. It challenged him to grow beyond simple comfort. They met less often at first, not because of distance but because space was necessary, and when they did meet, conversations were slower, more thoughtful, free from hidden tension, and Emma noticed how differently she felt now, less afraid, more present, even when the future felt unclear. Time passed, seasons shifted, and one evening they found themselves together again, this time by the water outside Vancouver. The sky painted in soft evening colors, and as they stood there, the calm between them felt earned, not forced. Emma realized she was no longer searching for permission to feel the way she did, because she had accepted that her heart was shaped differently, and that difference did not make her broken or selfish. Daniel stood beside her, offering quiet support without claiming more than he could give, and Lucas stayed close, not demanding answers but sharing the moment, and in that balance, Emma felt something she had rarely felt before: peace. There were still questions ahead, choices yet to be made, and no promises carved in stone, but for the first time she understood that love did not have to follow a fixed design to be real. It only had to be honest. As the night deepened and the city lights reflected across the water, Emma breathed in the cool air and felt steady, knowing that whatever path unfolded next would be built on truth rather than fear, and that sometimes choosing yourself does not mean choosing one person over another, but choosing to live without denying your own heart, even when the ending is still unwritten.